Paris Olympics is already mired in many controversies, and organizers and authorities are busy firefighting on various counts, from terror threats, environmental concerns, safety issues, the opening ceremony venue itself, the River Seine events, to name just a few. And amid all this, political tensions are also on the rise. The tenuous ties between Ukraine and Russia is a serious concern that is threatening to disrupt the functioning of the Olympics. In a move that can only further heighten the already tense geopolitical relationship, Ukrainian athletes have been sent a strict diktat, an advisory on how to behave with their counterparts from Russia and Belarus at the Games. The special advisory has been sent ahead of the Games. It's a directive that comes from not only the Olympic chiefs of Ukraine, but also the sports ministry. Here's a report. Political ties between Russia and Ukraine have been strained for years now. In the latest turn of events post the war, authorities in Ukraine have sent an advisory to their athletes who are set to participate in the Paris Olympics. A key order in the advisory is to avoid any communication of any kind with the Russian and Belarusian athletes. They are not to engage in conversations, interact, shake hands, or make any gesture towards the Russian athletes in particular, whether it's inside the Games village or during the matches. Ukraine's sports ministry has made the advisory sound like a call to action. They've encouraged their athletes to observe Russian athletes and report any violations of neutrality requirements. It's like keeping tabs on the enemy. This, of course, comes at the back of a severe backlash over Russian and Belarusian athletes being allowed to participate in the Games. While matters between Russia and Ukraine continue to escalate on the borders, the International Olympic Committee, or the IOC, are desperately trying to keep the peace in the Games. Despite all the criticism, the IOC had earlier taken the decision to allow Russians to participate, but under a neutral flag. Their medals won't be counted, nor would they be present during the opening ceremony. That comes as a big blow. But Ukraine, one of the major protesters to this IOC decision, has urged its athletes to keep an eye on their neighbors. It almost feels like war. This is only bound to create more friction between the two nations. The biggest sporting platform has often been used as a stage for political statements and threats. We've seen numerous instances in the past where political conflicts have played out on the Olympic stage, from boycotts to protests to controversial gestures. The 1956 Olympics in particular was boycott central. Many Western countries boycotted the Games because of Soviet Union's invasion in Hungary. China boycotted because of Taiwan's participation, a country that Beijing considered was illegal political entity. And the Arab nations of Egypt, Iraq and Lebanon boycotted over the joint British-Israel-French invasion of the Suez Canal. Ukraine too had threatened to boycott the Games after IOC allowed Russians and Belarusian athletes to participate. But ever since that decision, tensions have only risen. With the Games less than 90 days away, the standoff between Russia and Ukraine is set to take center stage once again. The recommendations by the Ukrainian Sports Ministry also say that the Ukrainian athletes must avoid sharing photos or videos with Russian or Belarusian athletes. The anger and dissent is just as deeply ingrained in athletes as it is in political leaders. Last year, Olga Karlin, a Ukrainian fencer, refused to shake hands with Russia's Anna Smirnova. Despite Karlin winning the match, the International Fencing Federation disqualified Karlin and advanced Smirnova to the next round. Karlin wasn't worried about the result. For her, showing disrespect towards the opponent was more paramount. In another incident the same year, Ukrainian athlete Ivan Chuprinko refused to shake hands with his Iranian rival Amir Rizé Mesfouroush. This was at a medal ceremony in a World Championship event. Chuprinko's dissent was in protest to Iran supplying arms to Russia. At the 2023 Australian Open, Lysya Surenko refused to shake hands after her fourth-round match against Belarus's Aryna Sabalenka. And not just at the Australian Open, the chapter continued in other competitions too. Ukraine's Anhelina Kalinina refused to shake hands with Veronika Kudermetova, her Russian opponent in the 2023 Rome Masters. Former world number 3 Ukrainian tennis player Elina Svitolina has time and again taken a stand against her Russian counterparts in this very matter. It started with the Ukrainian government that went to the meetings with the Russian government. They were against shaking hands because they're not sharing the same values, obviously, and what the Russians are doing to our country. We are Ukrainians, all united for one goal. I'm standing for my country. doing anything possible to support men and women who are right now in the front line, fighting for our land, our country. Can you imagine the guy or girl in the front line looking at me and I'm acting like nothing is happening? Given what has transpired in the past 1 year, the matter will not stop here. Ukraine's advisory is just the tipping point. Will Paris Olympics organizers be able to handle this at a larger scale? Because one misstep, a rude comment, or an ill-thought gesture could lead to something more catastrophic. And that's the last thing authorities want at a global event that stands for unity.